How's everyone's advertisements going? Good. I've got one thumbs up. So
Still
hopefully,
thumbnailing them.
okay. Doing thumbnails. So I didn't give you set numbers for that stuff. I believe on this one, I think I left up to you what the creative process is. You should know what it is by now, and we taught you that in ARTC 100. Um, and so I will expect you to do your own creative process, and to it should um, it should be shown without me having to tell you. Well, professionals do this many thumbnails, and professionals do this, you know, do this many roughs or whatever it is. So I'll expect that you figure that out. But it's basically the regular same creative process that we've always done. Got one more added person. So yeah, get those thumbnails done, but you're not turning them in preliminarily for me. You're just turning them in everything together at one time on not a week from yesterday. So we've got another week to get this done. I've got some stuff I'm going to show you today, and then Wednesday is going to be a lab day to work on the project. But really, other than our Zoom meetings, everything is asynchronous, meaning you do it on your own time whenever you want. So I have it on Wednesday's module, but I think I have everything on Wednesday's module already turned on. Let me double check that. Let's see. Yeah. Okay, I just turned in one more thing on Wednesday. So everything on Wednesday is turned on, so you can look at that at your own leisure. Okay. Any questions about anything before I get into talking about our canvas and look at some InDesign stuff? If you have questions, then you can text them on our chat, and then I'm just going to go through the canvas, and feel free at any time during this to push the space bar and unmute yourself and ask a question. Once I get into demoing actually I don't have a very intensive demo today. I'm just showing you some stuff in InDesign that will be useful for this project. But once I get into that point, then I'll stay muted till I'm done with the demo part, because usually I'll post those. Everybody, I'm going to click share screen here and go to our canvas. So you should be seeing week 8. Somebody, Richard, do you see week 8 on your screen? Give me a thumbs up if that's what you're seeing. I can see I don't see everybody's image on canvas right now.
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, awesome. So, well, I'm going to actually go to week 7. So we had our project magazine, no texting while driving. And so I'm going to go over that real quickly here. I gave you a logo and copy that you should use for that. And this is a public service campaign that you would create for a magazine that would strongly communicate how wrong it is to text while driving. The principle of design that I want you to emphasize on this design is the rule of thirds. Everybody know the rule of thirds? If not, we taught you that, I'm sure, in ARTC 100 when we talked about principles and elements of design. But if you've taken 2D design, they would teach you, I would hope, the rule of thirds in that class too. I haven't taught that class at Mount SAC, but I teach design and layout all the time in every class. So rule of thirds, if you're not, maybe that's a little fuzzy, just think tic-tac-toe board is the rule of thirds. Whatever your layout is, it's a very horizontal layout, it's a very vertical layout. Think a tic-tac-toe board, and then put your major visual elements on one of those intersection points on a tic-tac-toe board. You'll get with a rule of thirds layout a ideally good asymmetrical balance. So that's what we're going for here. Rule of thirds. That's hopefully your design will clearly demonstrate an understanding of this principle of design composition. All right, magazine advertisement specification. This is a requirement that sometimes students struggle with because I'm making you think, ow, that hurts. I got a headache, Mr. Dennis, you're making us think. But it's readily available. Students before you have done this, so I know you can find it. Let's say you are in real life, you have a client and they do skateboard decks or skateboard supplies. So what kind of magazines would that run in? Well, magazines, skateboard culture type of magazines. And so you could say, okay, I'm doing a magazine for skateboard stuff. So you have a real client, and you'll want to talk to that client, to that printer or that magazine sales rep and say, okay, I'm doing an ad. I need the specifications for the ad. Because the thing you don't want to have happen is design an ad for their magazine, and then they call you up after you've already submitted the artwork to the magazine, and they'll say, hey, your ad doesn't work in our format. And you'll go, oh, well, let me redo it. And they go, well, we got to go to press tomorrow, and then you don't have time to fix it. So that could be really disastrous for you and your client. And so what you do is you communicate with the magazine right off the bat, and you may end up doing that on your own, or you may have a client that does that for you. It really depends. But I've been on both sides of that equation, where I'm talking directly with the printer or the publication, or I'm talking to my client who's done that for me. But so this is there. You could say, okay, I'm going to go to Wired magazine. I'm going to run an ad in Wired magazine. And you can just go online without too extensive of searching, find their advertisement spec sheet. And this is like anybody who's going to buy an ad for their magazine, they'll say, here are the specifications. Here's the dimensions. Here's the bleed. Here's live area. What's this stuff mean? I'll talk about it. And so those are spec sheets or specification sheets. So you need to find online one of these specification sheets. It will probably be a PDF that you can download, or a JPEG or a PNG, and you can download that. You will include that in your file, part of your PDF. So let's see, download a PDF. You will turn in with your final PDF. And let's see. Okay, so hopefully no questions on that. I think I've covered that. I can, I could show you spec sheets, but I'll let you dig on that because I don't want to just give you that. Text and images, I have given you that. They are right here below, and they're also up here in the download. Well, I'm supplying you the text. You have to provide your own headline and imagery. I think I'm going to edit this and make that highlighted, just so you will provide the headline and imagery. So I'm only giving you text. You are deciding what will be the appropriate headline. So that's your main big message, and what's your imagery. You can use stock images, create your own images. If you use stock images, don't use images that are already photo manipulated or photoshopped. Don't have somebody's retouched photo be the most compelling part of your design. So this is a class that has a prereq. You've already learned Photoshop, so I don't want you to think, oh, this is just an InDesign class. This is an advertising design class using InDesign, but you already have Photoshop. Maybe you have Illustrator as well, have had or currently have it. Maybe you want to do some Illustrator work in Adobe Illustrator and bring it into Photoshop. Great. Maybe you want to do, an image of a phone with text images on it, and and manipulate that somehow. So you can do that work in Photoshop, but have that be your work, not somebody else's work. Because we don't have a really compelling image on your, you're showing this in a portfolio, you show some really neat, compelling image, and then people go, oh, wow, that's great. Tell me how you did that. And then you go, oh, it's just something I found online. Well, then what they say is, oh, well, can you tell me where you found it? Because I want to hire them, not you. So let's have your work be the awesome work. I've been that hiring manager where, and I've probably told you this story before, but I've been that hiring manager looking at somebody's portfolio that wants a job from the company I'm representing, and all of the stuff that I like in their portfolio turns out to be someone else's work. They don't get hired. Okay. So your job, you're actually creating 2 ads for this piece. You're creating a single full bleed. So that's a 1-page ad. I think I didn't give you specs. You're going to do the specs based on your magazine. So let's say that's an 8.5 by 11 ad. So you're doing a full page ad, and then you're going to do a spread. And a spread is a 2-page ad. Your final ads must comply with magazine specs. You're going to choose a magazine that you believe would best serve your public service message. So what kind of magazine is going to be texting and driving? It's probably not going to be a little, grade school children's magazine, Ranger Rick or something like that. It'll probably be a magazine that would be to drivers in general, and probably drivers that would tend to be more likely to be texting to get that message across. Okay, so it's due on April 19th in 6 days at 11:59 p.m. And you're giving me one InDesign package file for each advertisement. So you'll give me a separate full page ad, a separate 2-page ad, a process journal. This is all your creative process and thinking, the magazine spec sheet from a real appropriate magazine, and a folder for working art. If you made a composite Photoshop image, I need to see your Photoshop file, layered working file, or your Adobe Illustrator file, and I need art source folder, just like we would do in ARTC 100. Okay, any questions on that before I move on? Okay, I'm giving you built-in extra credit, but you'll notice there's an extra week to do the extra credit. So you could start doing the extra credit right now, but you have an extra week to do it. And you'll notice if you look at the points right here, it says 0, but the points right here say 25. There are 25 points possible for this, and then there's 75 points possible for the magazine. So this is really a 100-point project, and with an opportunity for even more points. So in this one, you're going to do, if you do the extra credit, and so what I would suggest you do is wait till the critique on the regular full page and 2-page spread, and then make those changes and build them into your half-page ad. Then you don't have to redo the same thing over and over, because if you go to the work of doing a half-page ad as well as your full-page ad and your 2-page ad, and again, this is extra credit, you don't even have to do it, but let's say you want to do that, no sense going to all this work to get this half-page vertical ad done, and then at the critique there's some major problems that now you're going to have 3 ads to fix it in. So here's the half-page ad. You are reformatting your same ad to a half-page vertical ad, and there are 25 points possible. The reason it says 0 down here is because these are extra credit points. So if I put any point total right here, it will count against your grade if you don't. So if you didn't do it, it would say there were 25 points possible, and you didn't do it. So that's minus 25 points. So I put 0, and that way any points I allocate on this assignment, then it's extra credit to you. So this is a vertical half page ad, same image, same text as your other two ads, just a vertical, thinner format. This is a very common design challenge. Often you repurpose the same art for multiple uses, and many times a company will run initially a larger ad. They're much more expensive. Maybe they'll run a 2-page ad or a full page ad, and then in subsequent issues they'll run a smaller ad. And ads come in many different size formats. You'll see that when you pull your spec sheets from the internet. So this should be a half page. When you get your spec sheet, you should find half page vertical specifications on that spec sheet. Almost always. That's one of the, I mean, the three most common ad formats are full page, and then probably the next most common is half page vertical, half page horizontal, and then 2-page spread, in that order. 2-page spreads being laid further down just because they're really expensive to run it, to buy 2 full pages. If you are looking in a very high readership, top of the line magazine, and they're running a 2-page ad, which you'll see all the time, but you'll see it, when you see that, just know they paid a lot of money for that. So a lot of times they'll run either that 2-page ad or they'll run a full page ad, and then in subsequent issues or in magazines that are smaller readership, they may throw a half page ad in later on, or in a smaller magazine. So if you don't have half page specifications, you can just cut the single page in half minus the 0.25 for the gutter. I'll explain that when I get to InDesign. So you need to include all the text and images from your full page ad. And here's even, so 25 points are possible, but even more points are possible if you create an additional third or quarter page. I should probably make it a quarter page, but third or quarter, I think I'm going to change that right now. A third might be too easy. I want to give you a little challenge, because a third you'd only have to condense a little bit. So I'm going to say just an additional quarter page vertical format. So again, very common design challenge, or challenge or not, a design assignment. This creates even more design considerations because it's a long, narrow column. And there's even 8th page ads. And so we call those strip ads. And those are, and I've done lots of those, and those are the real challenge, because you have such a narrow column width that type becomes a challenge because it has so many line breaks in it. Or an image, say you have a horizontal image and you have to run it on a 8th page strip ad, it gets really challenging to fit that info. But an 8th page, probably too hard, but I've done lots of them. And I used to work, when I was going to Art Center, I worked at a design firm that did a magazine, and then we picked up at a second magazine. Every Wednesday we would put out a whole music industry magazine, and I designed hundreds of 8th page strip ads during that time, maybe thousands. And they're always a real challenge, but that's what this is, just getting it to fit in a small horizontal area. All right, any questions? So that's potentially on our project, 2 ads, full page ad and a 2-page spread. A spread always means when you have 2 pages together. So I open my magazine and here's a page on one side, page on the left, page on the right. In magazine terminology, right-hand pages are called recto, left-hand pages are called verso. Just a little bit of lingo for you. It's not going to be on any test, but that's anytime you have 2 pages together, it's called a spread. So you're doing that, a full page, 1 full page ad. So maybe in your magazine, your ad would be on the right-hand page or the recto page, and then the verso page or left-hand page would be maybe the end of an article, or it could even be another advertisement. So, and you buy, actually the price for purchase for where the magazine ad runs, also they pay for that. So maybe there's the feature article or the cover article. That's going to be what gets people to buy the magazine. And if you're going to run your ad right at the end of that article, well, you're going to pay more for that than buried 3/4, 7/8 of the way to the back of the magazine. So that's how advertising budgets work. And usually you'll have somebody that does all that stuff for you. Your client usually has a marketing rep or a salesperson that's dealing with the magazine, but sometimes you're the one actually dealing with them. So you have 2 ads here, full page and double page, and then you have extra credit. Let's see, a 1/4 page vertical, and oh no, this is a 1/2 page vertical, and then extra credit 1/4 page vertical. The reason I just took out 3rd page, because going from a 1/2 page just a little bit narrower to a 3rd page, that would be too easy. So a 1/4 page, you've got to take your 1/2 page and cut it in half again. So that gets to be a fairly thin, narrow page. Okay, I'm going to talk about repurposing artwork. Frequently, I thought I put a header in on that. Let me go back to that page, repurposing artwork. Right before class started, I threw a header in on that, but I don't see it. Okay. Oh, it's on this lecture page here. So repurposing artwork. So here's an example right here. I'll show you an InDesign, but I also have a PDF here, and I'm going to take you to that PDF to explain a real life example where I've worked with a client that wanted some artwork repurposed. So I'm going to stop that share for a second, and I'm going to go to Adobe Acrobat here. Let's see. Okay, so I had a client that worked in software development. They were called, well, they still are. I was not doing any work for them right now. Access Data, and they do a lot of software. Their clients would be like the CIA, maybe the FBI, lawyers, people who are doing cyber forensics and investigations. It might be network engineering type of people who are using their software to find bad code or to find malware, or things of that nature. This particular client, this particular product, they have they bought a company called Summation, and so what they're doing here is this was a full-page magazine ad that was introducing the fact that Access Data has merged with Summation or purchased Summation. And so Summation, they were about analysis, attorney review, and case management. That's what the Summation software did. The Access Data software did these things: identification, litigation hold, collecting, processing, analysis. So those are all things that lawyers and law firms would be interested in. And so they've got a headline here. Basically their headline is right here. It's the big bold type, one solution, could be bigger. And then here's the subhead right here. So the subhead is Access Data walks you through each phase of the e-discovery lifecycle from litigation hold to trial. Sounds exciting, I know, but lawyers love that stuff. So headline, just one solution. Because they would have clients that would buy this software that in the past would have bought the Access Data software or would have bought the Summation software. And now they've merged that together in one seamless thing. So they have one solution's the headline, and then the subhead is an explanation of that one solution, that it does this. And then this is the body text right here. It's explaining a little bit more. Access data and summation are now one company. We're bridging the gap between IT and legal by integrating access data e-discovery. So access data e-discovery was their old software, with the award-winning review and case management technology summation. And so that would mean something to their clients. And so that's their ad. They liked it. It ran in, I don't know, legal review magazines. And then they came back later and said, okay, we're going to run that in another ad, but we don't want all that info. We just want just the image, and did a header. I think actually this was in conjunction with a trade show they did. So had this header design, which was basically the subhead before. But you can see it's a wider, different format publication. And then here you can see I've got some dividers here. This was for a trade show. And so these are 8 foot tall by 4 foot wide trade show panels. So this is a 12 foot wide trade show panel. And so if you'll notice in this area here, I've been very careful where the seam hits, a little tight there, but it turned out okay, because we don't want to cut letters in half on them. So again, with this area here, this black line is the seam. Over here, the black line's the seam. So I've been very careful to not cut type in half. So there's one design trade show, poster type of ad, and then regular magazine publication ad. Here's another one. This was a half-page ad that ran in a military magazine of some sort. And so it's a program called CERT, Cybersecurity Framework Software. And they have this image of the soldiers marching along this red line. And so, and this also, I should have that here. I didn't think to include that in this presentation, but this CRT, CERT, that comes from the packaging. And so this black band and the red type with all caps for CERT also is on the packaging. So that's one more application where part of only this part here, really, the black bar and the CERT appeared as well. So that was in packaging. It's in a half-page magazine ad here. Here's a full-page magazine. So you see a little bit different crop. See, since I've got all that vertical space, I think I cropped more there than here. It's bigger. And we've got a similar visual here, the marching troops, your last line of defense, CERT. I think the headline may have changed in some of them. I think it didn't. And then this is an explanation about the software. And then here is, this one was for another publication. And then here's a banner ad that ran on their web page. And then here is a sign for a trade show. So same artwork multiple times. And you can look at those. They're not fantastic, but they're, my client loved them. And they're right here, this hyperlink. Then I'm going to get off of Acrobat. And we're going to look at, I'm going to go back to our browser. So here's another image, or you all see an art show now. Anybody? I can see Nick, Jay. Okay, you're seeing art show. So here is an example of exactly what this assignment is. So I've got a full page ad for an art show. And so you've got this mosaic tile, experiences the evolution of mosaic as an art form. And there's a couple of small visuals of trust and choose made out of mosaic. Here's a little quote from Lori Jessica Nelson about mosaics, and then here's some info about it and the word art. There's a full page ad. It looks fine. And then we've got a 2-page ad. Well, how are we going to make that work? So we've got choose, got much bigger. We've got trust, got much bigger. We've got all this space. Art show got wider, but I didn't want it to be wanted to fit that space. And then I'm minding the gutter. So what that means is the gutter is the space between the 2 pages. So I needed to leave a gap here. I didn't want to trim off part of the S or part of the T. So I left a wide space there, and then added this art here because we've got a big empty space here. So took some of that mosaic from this area, took the type from art, and just added a new element to it. And that's okay sometimes. The type that used to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines is now 1 line of type plus the sign off. And this quote here becomes long and everything aligns here. So there's a 2-page spread. I should put a line in between those. And then here's the extra credit piece. This is a 1/2-page spread. So if I took this piece, you'd see that it's half the size of the full page ad. So it's a 1/2-page vertical ad. And you can see all of the same main pieces are there, but you have to reconfigure things, reformat things. You may look at the full page ad and go, that's not that great because this big gap here, but I'm going to talk about gutters in just a minute. So gutters are in the magazine the seam, and so magazines are bound in different ways. There's a binding called saddle stitching or staple stitch, and so like a thinner magazine will have that, and you'll see a staple along the, if you open to the center spread, you'll see staples there, and on the outer binding edge you'll see staples. And so that's the cheapest, most common binding method for magazines. And then there's a method called perfect bound. And I just happen to have a magazine right here, Designer's Guide to Text Type. Everybody see that? This is perfect bound right there. Can you see that? So that's basically, it's for thicker magazines, and it's where all the sheets are printed individually and then they're glued in. So that's called perfect bound. So that's in either event, whether it's saddle stitched or perfect bound, when you go to, and this is just a big specimen of type, when you go to the middle, you'll see there's a gutter there. That's that seam in the middle is a gutter. And so as the book closes, you see stuff gets swallowed in the gutter. So I'll talk more about minding the gutter on another page, but that's what's happening here. I have a little bit of extra space there for the gutter. So frequently the client will want repurposed artwork, and repurpose means we're using it again with modifications, same artwork for different applications and formats. Like in that Access Data one, I had 2 full-page ads, but one was a little wider because it was a wider magazine, and it had a different readership, so they excluded some information on it. They may, in that particular software, it dealt with IT people and legal people. So for the IT magazine, they had some info. For the legal people, they had other info. They may have a different call to action. On Wednesday's class, I have a page called Call to Action. Basically, a call to action is, what does this ad want me to do? And the ad, examples of a call to action, maybe it's a web ad, and maybe it will say, click here for, and you'll click on that link and it will take you to the page to buy the product or to get further information or to link to another page on the website. But that's the call to action. Call to action can be interpreted as do this. And so sometimes not every ad has a call to action. Some ads are, particularly if you get into like fashion and makeup and fragrance, stuff like that. A lot of times they're just selling a mood or a lifestyle. Obviously, they want you to buy their product, but they don't have a call to action statement. They don't have a sentence that says, go to this store to buy the product. That would be a call to action. They would just have the celebrity with the perfume and they're looking pretty and you assume they smell good because they're holding a bottle of perfume. And so that's more about lifestyle, and there's not a call to action. But most web ads will have a call to action. It's really easy with web advertising to be able to click on a link and to take you to their catalog or to take you to their the page that explains more or to buy their product. So different publications will have different needs. So the same modified artwork might be used for print ads in different sizes, for web pages, for banner ads, for trade show displays, for brochures and flyers, infographics, outdoor advertising, video. They may want your graphics to be inserted into video, presentation decks. So maybe the marketing team or the sales team, they need your graphics and they want it in a PowerPoint so that they can show that to whoever their audience is. And so, and I've done many PowerPoints for clients. Often I'll do packaging or I'll do trade show work and they'll say, okay, we need these graphics in a PowerPoint. And so I do that a lot as well. Direct mail. So those are just a few I thought of quickly, but there's even more than that. But often it's the same artwork over and over again. In magazine print advertising, you have when you download your specification sheet, your advertising specification sheet. And so how do I find that? Well, maybe you just if you just Google, Wired magazine advertisement specification sheet, you may find it, you may not. You may Google something like purchase advertising in Wired magazine or whatever your magazine is, and you'll probably find it that way because they don't hide that stuff because they want people to buy advertising. That's how they make their money in their magazine. They make money from you buying the magazine and reading the pages, but really the big money's from selling their advertising. So they make that available to people who could buy advertising. So you can find that. So preset sizes, again, 2-page spread, 1-page spread, half-page horizontal, half-page vertical. Note, in this assignment, I'm making you do for the extra credit a half-page vertical, not half-page horizontal, because what you'll find is a half-page horizontal is really the same layout as a 2-page spread. It's just shrunk down 50%. So if you do the extra credit, it has to be a half-page vertical, not horizontal, if that makes sense. Some magazines do 3rd page, some magazines do a quarter. They will do one or the other, but usually not both. I've seen both. 8th page strip, those ads are like usually crammed in the back of a magazine. And then box ads. Box ads would be, so maybe it's a 1/4-page ad. So, and then when you buy a box ad, you pay for, I'm buying top left corner box ad. Why that one versus bottom left? Well, because we read top to bottom, left to right. So they sell premium spots based on where it's located on the page, where it's located in the magazine. And that's it for repurposing artwork. Let's see, back to today. Today, classroom in a book, lesson 8, you should be working on. That should be due on this week. I'm going to go to stop share there. And I'm going to go to InDesign and show you some stuff that will be useful. Any questions before I do that? Because this is the part, if I post it, this upcoming part would be the part I would post. No question? Okay, so I'm gonna go to Adobe InDesign here. And here is the art show work I was just showing you. So here's art show. This is a one-page, full-page ad. And so if I hit W, we know that's right here in InDesign, the preview mode, the normal mode, the preview mode, the bleed mode. If I say bleed, you see the bleed. We see the margins and the frames when we click on things. So this is a full page ad. You'll see I have bleed top, bottom, left, right sides. The bleed is 0.125. If I go to document setup, file, document setup, you'll see on bleed, I have a 0.125 bleed all the way around. It's 8.5 by 11 page. The margins are set at 0.5. That's a pretty average margin. That's the default when you are in InDesign. But you don't have to be limited to that. That's just an average. But you want to keep clear of small type or important imagery getting lost in the gutter and falling off the edge of the page. On that point, here's the 2-page spread, and you see I've got a 1/2-inch gutter on either side, a 1/2-inch margin on either side of the gutter. This middle seam is the gutter. You can see over here on my pasteboard, I've got choose and trust, and the original size of those pieces, you can see how much they blew up from the original image, the full page ad, to this 2-page ad. And then again, recreation, creation of a new element because it just needed something extra. And so could have done that, could have done something else, could have, picked a selection of, some of the mosaics or something like that. The type, very horizontal treatment versus a very square treatment before. And then ample space to where when the type when the magazine folds, we don't lose important type in the gutter. And then here is the 1/2-page vertical ad. And this one is same thing. Oh, I do want to point out something on the spread here. Notice I have bleed top, right, left, and bottom. I don't really need bleed in the middle, and I'll show you an example on that in a minute. But if I think I've got that set up this way. Let's see. I'm going to go to document setup, and yeah, this bleed's actually not set up right. If I print a PDF of this, I would get for the inside gutter here, I would have a gap showing. So the correct setup, note if I tell this, I want 0 on that, see everything changes to 0. So I wouldn't want to do that. I would want to under document setup, or when I first set the document up, you have to click this little make settings all the same, turn that off, and then the inside should be 0, and then that won't change the others. So it didn't give you any difference here because you don't see the bleed in the center, but the output would work better. And I have a visual to show you on that in a minute. So on this one, you can see it does show different. Notice on my bleed, I've got this red line right. So there's no bleed. I'm just in presentation mode. I hit W, you can see the red key line there, the outer line there. It's a 1/8 of an inch, top, bottom, right. I don't have a left side bleed. Why? because this is a half page. That means there's going to be something else to the left of this on the page. And so whichever side of the magazine I'm buying, this is making the assumption that I bought an outer edge of a half of a full page. I bought the right edge of the magazine. And then this center part here, I didn't buy this area to the left of that. I only bought right to the center of the magazine. And then they'll actually include an alley between what I purchased and what the magazine has. This might be on the left, it might be the remainder of an article, or it could even be somebody else's advertisement, depending on the magazine. So there's our 3 types of ads: full page, 2-page, half page vertical. If I go to add file document setup, you'll see in my bleed here, top has an 1/8 inch bleed, bottom has an 1/8 inch bleed, outside has an 1/8 inch bleed, inside has no bleed. And so that's what we have happening here. We don't see a bleed. And then again, I've got like the word art here. You can see how that's been reformatted. This one didn't have a major amount of reformatting. The art show and the squares here are all able to stay in the same basic XY configuration, just the scale moved down. But art needed to get wider to align with things, and then the beautiful got wider as well. So there's 3 examples of that. I've got a page here to show you some points here. On a 2-page spread ad, facing pages does not matter on a spread document. So by that, I mean, I hit new document, I'm gonna click print right here, and I'm going to tell this to be an 8.5 by 11 size document, and I'll say 2 pages. And so if I'm doing a multiple page, like a whole magazine, this facing pages where I'm going to have 2 pages in a row will matter, and then the start page will matter, because there'll be InDesign works on the assumption there's a cover and then there's a spread that follows the cover. But if you're only doing a 2-page ad, facing pages doesn't really matter. You can click it or not. It's not going to matter because there's only 2 pages. So go ahead and check it if you want. Start page should be number 2. If you don't set start page as number 2, I'm going to have start page be number 1, and let's see what happens. Create. Oh, I've got a single page here. You see that? I'm going to zoom down and see what I have in InDesign. I have 1 page, 2 page. Oh, well, because InDesign's default is it's thinking this is the cover page. So I would have to go back to document setup, and I'd have to say, oh, let's have facing pages, start page be number 2. It's a little confusing because you think, well, this is page 1. But if you think of this in InDesign, if you think page 1 always means cover, then that makes more sense. So page 2, I'll click that, and you'll see what I get. Then I get a page, 2 pages together. So that works much better for what we're doing. Back to my design here. So facing pages does matter. I was saying doesn't matter. It does matter. I'm going to close these ones. I'll just leave them open. Facing pages does matter. Let's see what happens if we don't do facing pages. Document setup. I think if I don't do facing pages, yeah, then they're not together. So I do have to click facing pages. I'm not sure, but I might have said does not matter, but the what I wrote here is correct. Facing pages does matter, and start page being page number 2. So you need to do both of those things, my untitled page. So again, file, document setup. I have to check facing pages. I have to check start on page 2. Otherwise, I have a problem. Okay, next thing, since I'm doing so I'm going to click preview here. You can see that that's working as a spread now. I'm talking about the 2-page ad right now. So next, I'm going to go to bleed. And if I just click the up arrow here, I'll get 0.125, and notice that it went all the way across. What I need to do is uncheck this and tell inside to be 0, because there's no bleed from this page into this page and vice versa. We really design a 2-page spread as one piece. We just have to be mindful of that gutter, that seam in the middle. But this is how it should be. The bleed should be. We're not worrying about slug at all in this class. Again, slug, if you didn't recall what I talked about, that's where you put the info. If you're sending this off to a printer, you put the name of the firm, you put the name of the designer, the contact information for the designer, the name of the copywriter, their contact info, the production artist, their contact info. That way, if the printer has a question, they know who to call and talk to. So that's what slug's all about, but we don't really need to do that in this class. Okay, so that's basically the settings. The margins, I just said be 0.5. That was the default. Well, maybe I don't want 0.5. Maybe I want 375. Maybe the inside. And again, if I want something different, I have to check this link here. So let's say I want 0.375, and then I want a 1/2 inch in the, I'll make it a big number just so you can see what I'm talking about. So there's a 1-inch margin. So that means I have 1 inch to the left, 1 inch to the right, and then I have 0.375 or 3/8 of an inch around the other edge. You would never need a 1 point, but like a 0.5 1/2 inch is a good margin for gutters. Okay, so there's the basic setup. Back to my ad format sheet. So that I've covered this one. 2-page spread, facing pages does matter. Start page should be page number 2. This will butt your pages side by side. And then if you don't, it will give you a cover page and a single interior page. Bleed, I've just covered that. 0.125 versus bleed is 0.125, which is 1/8 of an inch, and you don't do the inner edges. The margins should be set. That depends on what you're doing, but you need to accommodate a live area. And what live area, sometimes it's called live matter, sometimes it's called save area. Live area is the most common in my experience. So this is called live area. Is nothing that's important type or image wise will come closer to the trim than that number. So that varies based upon what type of printing you're doing. If you're doing packaging, that would be a different live area than magazine. It's all about the tolerances. If you're doing packaging, which I do a lot of, you've got tucks and folds, and you don't want something that legally has to appear on the side panel, tucking and folding under to the bottom panel. That could mean that product has to be pulled off the shelf and over labeled, and I've seen that happen. So that costs a lot of money, and potentially the client can refuse. Like Walmart will say, hey, we needed it for this day, you've got to relabel this, we're not going to take it. Now you'll find that product at Big Lots or something like that, where the company's just trying to cut their losses. So live area and margin and gutter, those two kind of the same thing. You don't want to lose that area. I'm gonna do a demo here. I'm gonna look at the page layout here. Let's see the document setup. We'll see what happens. And notice I've got, in this one, I've got this type in the small type right in the margin here. It's not that small a type, but like this E here, it's going to get eaten up in the gutter. The E and the M here. The O here will totally disappear in the gutter. I've got a seam right there. So right here, I've got bleed, 1/8 inch, inside 0. Okay, that's what I would want to have. Page display, 2-page view. And so here's what you don't want to have happen. So you don't want to, see I've got bleed showing up right here. And I've got this gap in between. So the difference there is when I output that, I told it to show printer's marks. And so just an explanation of printer's marks. These lines right here, this tick here, it's like a 1/2 point rule, about a 1/2 inch long. And this line here, that's called a crop mark. That line will align over here with this crop mark, and the printer will cut along that line. So you'll see there's 1/8 of an inch of excess ink that prints beyond the vertical crop and the horizontal crop. So all of this area here will get totally cut out. This second crop line here is not really a crop line. That's just the outer edge of the bleed. So the printer won't ever crop to that. The colors, that's all the colors of the swatches. And then this is a grayscale. Those are just for the printer to get their ink right on the project. If you have like spot colors, so maybe you're doing a CMYK, so this has a bunch of spot colors on it. If you're doing a CMYK, cyan, magenta, yellow, black, and you do a spot color would be a specific color that's not part of the process ink, cyan, magenta, yellow, black. So you'll make a custom spot color. Maybe you're printing with a metallic ink, maybe you're printing with a fluorescent ink, but that stuff would show up on this. Also, when you package your files, they give you a report that will tell you whether you have spot colors. So you don't want to have that. You don't want to have when we look at this next week, I don't want to see, make sure you turn off show crops and printer marks, because we don't want to have your, we want to have your design we'll see the division between the 2 pages like I'm seeing here, but we don't want to really have it disjointed this way. And you can see it's doing things, since this one has bleed, it's showing this R repeated here. So you don't want to, that's very annoying to look at this, see this 8, whoops, zoom the wrong way. The 8 here is sliced in half here, and then it's repeated in whole here. So that won't look good for your presentation. So just when you output, so I hit Command E again. In the printer settings, there's marks and bleeds. And if you click all printers marks, then you're gonna get all that stuff. So don't check those. And you actually have to go in there to turn that on. So just don't do that, okay? All right, that's it for the InDesign. So that's basically the settings that will be important for you to have the bleed set up right, no interbleed on your, if you do a 1/2 page extra credit ad, don't do bleed on one of the 2 sides, probably the left-hand side. And that's about it. Any questions about anything? Okay. If you want to talk, you push spacebar to talk. I'm not hearing any questions, so that's all I have for today. Jump right from your layouts to your designs, but this needs to be something compelling. I mean, what would make you impact you, or well, not you, because obviously you guys are all just spectacular drivers who would never text while driving, because you value your life and the lives of your passengers and the other people on the road by you. But maybe you've seen that guy who's driving along. And I tell you, I drive to Riverside like 3 days a week. Well, not when I'm not in COVID-19 quarantine. And some days I'll see somebody driving like this and look up. And so a lot of times you'll see that person. And sometimes you see somebody get honked at a stop sign, or the light changes and they're looking down, their text, because they can't be 2 seconds without responding to a text. There was a tragic train accident a few years back. The engineer of the train was texting his girlfriend or his wife. I think it was his girlfriend. He was texting his girlfriend right before the instant the train derailed, and he was killed, and a bunch of people were killed. It was in Los Angeles, and he was texting. He was inattentive. But I've seen, you've seen somebody glancing down at their phone periodically and they're still texting as they're driving along the freeway. You're going 70 miles an hour, 65 miles an hour. We're going by the speed limit, right? And so you're traveling in the time it takes to look down and up. Your car, it's not a math, word question here, but you could do that. It's going to go quite a bit of a distance. And if there's a car in front of you that locks up their brakes and you're looking at your phone, you're going to pick up a car in your grill. And so I've seen on the road where it's more looking at the palm of their hand that their phone's been surgically inserted to, or maybe it's evolution and the phone just becomes part of their hand because it's never out of their hand. I see the head down looking at their hand more than I see it up looking at the road. I always worry when I see that, and I get away from that driver because I know they're not paying attention to the road to the degree that they need to be. So what would impact on your ads that person that would make them think, hey, maybe I ought to be more considerate in my driving. Maybe I ought to be more attentive. What would move that person to do it? I would say, I would suggest you steer you away. Steer, get it? Cars. There's a little advertising driving while texting pun. I would steer you away from super graphic imagery. I remember when I was in driver's ed in high school, and that when I was in driver's ed in high school, we were riding horses and buggies, so it was a little different, than you guys. But there was ads, there were shows, movies we would watch that would show grisly car wreck scenes with dead bodies hanging out, and that was pretty graphic. So, I don't want your little sister to come in your room and see your InDesign project, and now your sister has nightmares for the rest of her life. So it's easy to go shock and graphic. Let's try to go sophisticated, intelligent approach more than just gore, because that's not too challenging mentally to just come up with a gory, bloody image. So try to be a little more sophisticated in this, a little more intelligent in this, and not just rely on a severed arm holding a phone kind of thing. So I don't know, that's kind of a cool image. No, don't do it. Okay, does that make sense? So come up with something creative, something clever, something that will get that message across. What the headline is, that's up to you. You can have a subhead. A lot of ads have subheads. So in the access data ones I was showing, it was just saying one solution. That was their headline. And then their subhead was a little long, but it was, a brief explanation, one sentence about the merge of those two software. Not mandatory, but it may make your ad work better if you have a subhead. Okay. All right, everyone, work away. I have stuff posted on Wednesday's class already. It won't change this week, but I didn't explain it all. But you ought to look at Wednesdays sometime between now and when this project's due. That's the asynchronous part of the class where you do that at your own leisure. But I have put basically what I would have shown you on Wednesday if we were meeting in class on a normal meet at the school day. We will Zoom again on Monday. So this is due Sunday night at midnight. Monday we'll Zoom same time, 1 o'clock, and we'll have a critique. I'll have a new assignment for you at that time. All right, take care.